You wake up at 3 in the morning, your heart pounding against your ribcage like a prisoner desperate to escape. The numbers flash before your eyes in the darkness of your bedroom. Bills, debts, obligations, promises you made that now feel like chains around your chest, making it harder to breathe with each passing second. You reach for your phone, scrolling through your bank account, as if checking it one more time might somehow change the reality staring back at you. It does not. The anxiety does not just visit you anymore. It lives with you now. It sits at your breakfast table. It rides with you to work. It whispers in your ear during every meeting, every conversation, every moment when you are trying to pretend that everything is fine. You have become a master at wearing the mask, smiling when your soul is screaming, nodding when your mind is racing with catastrophic scenarios. You look composed on the outside while a storm rages within. And the exhausting part is not just the financial pressure itself, but the constant performance of pretending it does not affect you. You are tired of being shaken, tired of the sleepless nights, tired of the knot in your stomach that never quite loosens, tired of feeling like a leaf in a hurricane, helpless and out of control, watching your peace, your joy, your very sense of stability get torn away by circumstances that seem entirely beyond your power to change. But here is what I need you to understand right now before we go any further into this conversation. That emotional turbulence you are experiencing, that constant state of being rattled by every financial setback, every unexpected expense, every piece of bad news, that is not your permanent condition. It is a learned response, and anything learned can be unlearned. The question is not whether you can develop the unshakable composure that marks those who truly prosper. The question is whether you are willing to do what it takes to get there. Because there is a vast difference between people who are occasionally successful and those who build empires that outlast their own lifetimes. That difference is not found primarily in their intelligence, their connections, or even their initial capital. It is found in their internal state, in their ability to maintain absolute clarity and calm in the center of chaos. John D. Rockefeller understood this truth at a level that most people never reach. He was not just a businessman. He was a master of his own mind, a steward of his own emotions, a man who had learned the secret that I am about to share with you. The secret is this: your external circumstances do not determine your internal state. Your internal state determines how you respond to external circumstances, and that response is what ultimately shapes your financial reality. Most people have this backwards. They wait for their circumstances to improve before they give themselves permission to feel at peace. They tell themselves they will relax once the debt is paid off. They will be calm once the business stabilizes. They will finally breathe easy once they have 6 months of expenses saved. But Rockefeller knew better. He knew that peace is not the result of perfect circumstances. Peace is the foundation upon which perfect circumstances are built. What I am about to share with you is not just theory. This is not motivational fluff designed to make you feel good for 10 minutes before reality crashes back in. This is a comprehensive framework for developing genuine, unshakable inner stability that becomes your secret weapon in business, in finance, in every negotiation, every decision, every crisis you will face. This is about learning to operate from a place of such deep internal calm that external circumstances lose their power to control you. And when external circumstances lose their power to control you, you suddenly find that you have power over them. You stop being reactive and become strategic. You stop making decisions from fear and start making them from wisdom. You stop being a thermometer that simply reflects the temperature of your environment and become a thermostat that sets it. This transformation is not just possible for you, it is available to you right now. But you have to be willing to see money, success, and prosperity through an entirely different lens than the one you have been using. You have to be willing to understand that your relationship with money is primarily a spiritual issue before it is ever a practical one. Let me tell you something that Rockefeller understood intuitively, something that the wealthy have known for generations but rarely speak about openly. The moment you become emotionally dependent on any outcome, you have already lost your power in that situation. The moment you need something too desperately, you broadcast that desperation to everyone around you, and people can smell desperation the way sharks smell blood in water. It changes how they negotiate with you. It changes what they offer you. It changes the entire dynamic of every business interaction you have. Think about the last time you desperately needed a job, needed to make a sale, needed to close a deal. Remember how that desperation affected your performance? Remember how you could feel yourself trying too hard, pushing too much, willing to accept terms that you knew were not in your best interest because you simply could not afford to walk away? That is what happens when you allow circumstances to shake you. You give away your power. You hand over your leverage. You transform yourself from a person of value into a person of need, and in the marketplace, need is weakness. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking that this sounds cold, that it sounds like I am telling you to not care, to become some kind of emotionless robot moving through life without feeling anything. That is not what I am saying at all. In fact, it is the exact opposite. I am talking about caring so deeply about your purpose, your calling, your divine assignment, that temporary setbacks and obstacles simply cannot knock you off course. I am talking about being so anchored in your identity as a child of God, so secure in the knowledge that you are called to steward resources for a greater purpose, that the daily fluctuations of your bank account do not determine your emotional state. This is not about suppressing your emotion. This is about mastering them. There is a crucial difference. When you suppress emotions, you are trying to pretend they do not exist, pushing them down, ignoring them, which only makes them stronger and more destructive. When you master your emotions, you acknowledge them, you understand them, but you do not let them drive the car. You do not let fear make your financial decision. You do not let anxiety write your business plan. You do not let desperation determine your next move. Rockefeller was famous for his composure in situations that would have destroyed other men. During the Panic of 1893, when banks were failing and businesses were collapsing all around him, when other titans of industry were losing their minds along with their fortunes, Rockefeller remained calm. He did not panic sell. He did not make rash decisions. He maintained his strategy, stuck to his principles, and when the dust settled, he emerged stronger than before. But here is what most people miss when they study this period of his life. His composure was not a natural gift. It was not something he was born with. It was something he deliberately cultivated through daily practice, through spiritual discipline, through a conscious commitment to managing his internal state regardless of external chaos. He would take long walks to clear his mind. He would spend time in prayer and meditation. He would deliberately slow down his breathing and his speech when he felt pressure mounting. These were not random habits. These were strategic practices designed to maintain the mental clarity necessary for sound decision-making. The Bible speaks to this principle repeatedly, though we often miss the financial application. Consider the passage that says to be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds. That is not just a nice spiritual sentiment. That is a practical instruction for maintaining the internal state necessary for wise stewardship. When your heart and mind are guarded by peace that surpasses understanding, you make better decisions. You see opportunities that anxious people miss. You have the patience to wait for the right deal instead of jumping at the first option out of desperation. You have the clarity to recognize when something that looks good on the surface is actually a trap. Peace is not a luxury for those who can afford it. Peace is the prerequisite for being able to afford anything. Here is where most people get this wrong. They think that developing this kind of composure means becoming passive, accepting whatever circumstances throw at them, adopting a que sera attitude that borders on fatalism. That could not be further from the truth. The composure I am describing is not passive acceptance. It is active mastery. It is the difference between a ship that is tossed by every wave and a ship that is so well built, so well captained, that it can navigate through the storm without being controlled by it. You are still fully engaged. You are still taking action. You are still moving forward with your goals, but you are doing so from a place of strength rather than desperation, from a place of faith rather than fear, from a place of strategic thinking rather than reactive scrambling. This is what it means to act as if nothing bothers you. It does not mean that nothing actually bothers you. It means that even when things do bother you, even when circumstances are difficult, even when the pressure is intense, you have trained yourself to not let that external pressure determine your internal response. Let me share something with you that changed my entire perspective on this. There was a time when I would check my business accounts multiple times a day. Every notification, every email, every fluctuation would send my emotions on a roller coaster. Good news would make me euphoric. Bad news would send me into a spiral of anxiety. I was completely controlled by external circumstances, and I did not even realize it. I thought I was just being diligent, staying on top of things, being responsible. But what I was actually doing was making myself a slave to outcomes I could not fully control. Then I heard a quote that stopped me in my tracks. It said, "The things you own end up owning you." And I realized that this applied not just to physical possessions, but to outcomes, to results, to circumstances. I had become owned by my need for everything to work out exactly as I planned. I had become a prisoner to my own expectations. That realization was painful, but it was also liberating, because it showed me that I had been giving away my power voluntarily. No one was forcing me to check my accounts obsessively. No one was making me attach my emotional state to my bank balance. I was doing that to myself. And if I was doing it to myself, I could stop doing it to myself. So I made a decision. I decided to implement what I now call strategic detachment. This is not about not caring. This is about caring in the right way. Instead of checking my accounts constantly, I set specific times to review my finance. Twice a week. That is it. Outside of those times, I refused to look. At first it felt almost impossible. The urge to check was overwhelming. But I persisted. And something remarkable happened. When I was not constantly monitoring every little change, I found that I had mental space to actually think strategically about my business. I could see the bigger picture instead of getting lost in the daily noise. I could make decisions based on long-term vision instead of short-term fluctuations. My peace increased. And paradoxically, my results improved. Because I was operating from a place of clarity instead of anxiety, I was making better decisions. I was showing up differently in negotiations. I was more patient in waiting for the right opportunities. I was less likely to make impulsive choices out of fear. Strategic detachment became one of the most powerful tools in my financial arsenal. Now let me pause here for a moment because I want to hear from you. I want to know what your greatest challenge is when it comes to staying calm and composed in the face of financial pressure. What is the thing that shakes you the most? Is it unexpected expenses? Is it slow business periods? Is it comparing yourself to others who seem to have it all figured out? Here is what I want you to do. Go down to the comments right now and share your experience with us. Use this simple format. My greatest challenge with staying financially calm is blank, and I want to overcome this because blank. I need you to understand something. When you share your struggle in the comments, you are not just helping yourself. You are helping every single person who reads this and realizes they are not alone in their struggle. You are creating community. You are breaking the silence around a topic that too many people suffer with in isolation. And here is what I promise you. I read every single comment. I look for patterns. I use your shared experiences to create content that addresses your real needs, not just what I think you need, but what you are actually struggling with. Your comment matters. Your experience matters. And the act of putting it into words is often the first step toward overcoming it. So do not hold back. Do not worry about sounding weak or struggling. This is a safe space for real transformation. Comment now. Tell me what shakes you. Let us face it together. Now let us get into the practical mechanics of how you actually develop this unshakable composure. Because knowing that you should be calm is not the same as knowing how to be calm. And this is where most teaching on this subject falls short. People tell you what to do but not how to do it. They tell you to not worry, to have faith, to stay positive, but they do not give you the actual tools to make that happen. So let me give you the framework that Rockefeller used, adapted for our modern context, and filtered through a biblical worldview. The first principle is this: you must separate your identity from your outcomes. This is fundamental. Most people have their entire sense of self-worth tied up in whether their business succeeds, whether their investments perform, whether they hit their financial goals. When things go well, they feel valuable. When things go poorly, they feel worthless. This is a catastrophic error that will keep you trapped in emotional instability for your entire life. Your identity is not found in your outcomes. As a believer, your identity is found in whose you are, not in what you do or what you have. You are a child of the Most High God, created in His image, called for a purpose that transcends your bank account. That is your identity. Your business results are simply information. They are data points that tell you whether your current strategy is working or needs adjustment. They are not a commentary on your value as a person. When Rockefeller faced setbacks, and he faced many, he did not internalize them as evidence of personal failure. He viewed them as market information, as feedback, as an opportunity to adjust his approach. This psychological separation is what allowed him to remain calm when others were panicking. Because his sense of self was not on the line with every business decision, he could afford to be objective because he was not trying to prove his worth through his work. He had already settled the question of his worth independently of his results. This is crucial for you to grasp. Until you separate your identity from your outcomes, you will never have true peace, because your peace will be dependent on things constantly changing and often outside your complete control. But when you anchor your identity in something unchanging, in your relationship with God, in your calling, in your purpose, then external fluctuations cannot shake that foundation. You can experience a business failure without experiencing an identity crisis. You can lose money without losing yourself. This is the first and most important step. The second principle is what I call strategic ignorance. Now, this might sound counterintuitive, especially in a culture that tells you that you need to know everything, be aware of everything, stay constantly informed about every development in your industry and the market. But here is the truth. There is a difference between being informed and being consumed. There is a difference between strategic awareness and obsessive monitoring. Rockefeller was famous for his ability to delegate. He did not try to micromanage every detail of every operation in his vast empire. He hired competent people, gave them clear direction, and then trusted them to execute. This freed his mind to focus on the few things that actually required his personal attention. He practiced strategic ignorance about the details so he could maintain strategic awareness of the big picture. You need to apply this same principle to your financial life. You do not need to know the price of every stock in your portfolio every single day. You do not need to monitor every fluctuation in your business revenue hour by hour. You do not need to be aware of every possible risk and threat in the market. That level of hyper-awareness does not make you more prepared. It makes you more anxious. And anxiety is the enemy of good decision-making. Instead, you need to create what I call information boundary. Decide when you will receive financial information and when you will not. Decide which metrics actually matter for your decision-making and which are just noise. Decide who you will listen to and who you will tune out. This is not about burying your head in the sand. This is about being intentional with your mental energy and your emotional bandwidth, because both are finite resources, and if you waste them on constant monitoring and worrying, you will not have them available when you actually need to make important decisions. Think about it this way. If you are constantly in a state of high alert, constantly monitoring for threats, constantly consumed with financial anxiety, you are operating in what psychologists call a chronic stress response. Your body is flooded with cortisol. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for complex decision-making, is impaired. You are literally making yourself dumber by staying in a constant state of financial anxiety. But when you practice strategic ignorance, when you set boundaries around when and how you engage with financial information, you allow your nervous system to relax. You give your brain the space it needs to actually process information effectively. You create room for creativity, for insight, for the kind of strategic thinking that leads to breakthrough solutions. The third principle is the cultivation of what Rockefeller called a long view. Most people are trapped in short-term thinking. They obsess over this month's numbers. They panic over this quarter's performance. They make decisions based on immediate circumstances rather than long-term trajectory. This short-term focus is what makes them shakeable, because in the short term, things are always fluctuating. Markets go up and down. Sales have good months and bad months. Expenses vary. If you are evaluating your success or failure based on short-term metrics, you are going to be on an emotional roller coaster forever. But when you adopt a long view, when you measure your progress in years and decades rather than days and weeks, short-term fluctuations lose their power to disturb you. Rockefeller was building for generations. He was not trying to get rich quick. He was trying to build an empire that would last, a legacy that would outlive him. That long view gave him patience. It gave him the ability to weather storms that destroyed competitors who were only thinking about the next quarter. It allowed him to make investments that would not pay off for years because he knew he was playing a different game than most people. You need to adopt this same perspective. Stop measuring your financial success by what happened this week. Start measuring it by whether you are moving in the right direction over the long term. Are you building valuable skills? Are you developing important relationships? Are you creating systems that will compound over time? Are you making wise decisions, even when they are difficult? These are the questions that matter. These are the metrics that actually predict long-term success. When you shift to this long view, something powerful happens. You become almost immune to short-term setbacks because you understand they are just part of the journey. You do not panic when you have a bad month because you know that one bad month means almost nothing in the context of a 40-year career. You do not get shaken by criticism or rejection because you understand that these are temporary obstacles on a long road. This long view is what allowed Rockefeller to remain calm during market crashes, during competitive threats, during every crisis that would have destroyed someone who was only focused on the immediate. The fourth principle, and this is where it gets deeply spiritual, is what I call consecrated detachment. This is the practice of holding your financial goals and business ventures with an open hand before God. It is the recognition that you are not the ultimate owner of anything. You are a steward, a manager, a caretaker of resources that belong to God and are meant to be used for His purposes. This is not just a nice theological concept. This is a profoundly practical principle that changes everything about how you operate. When you truly believe that you are a steward rather than an owner, it transforms your relationship with success and failure. Success does not make you arrogant because you recognize it as God's blessing, not your achievement. Failure does not destroy you because you recognize that God is still sovereign, still in control, still working all things together for good. You can work with intense commitment and passion while simultaneously holding everything loosely, because you know that the ultimate outcome is in hands far more capable than yours. This is what Jesus meant when He said to seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. He was not saying to ignore practical matters. He was saying to get your priorities right. When your primary focus is on fulfilling your divine calling, on being faithful to your assignment, on using your gifts and resources for kingdom purposes, then the provision you need flows naturally. But when your primary focus is on the provision itself, on the money, on the success, you create an anxious striving that actually blocks the very abundance you are seeking. Rockefeller understood this. He was a devout Christian who took his faith seriously. He tithed faithfully from his very first paycheck. He saw his business success as an opportunity to fund kingdom work, to build institutions that would serve the greater good, to create jobs that would support families. His wealth was never an end in itself. It was a means to fulfill what he believed was his God-given purpose. And that sense of purpose, that conviction that he was doing more than just making money, that he was fulfilling a calling, that gave him a stability that mere ambition could never provide. You need to develop this same consecrated detachment. You need to be able to pursue your financial goals with everything you have, while simultaneously being willing to surrender them if God calls you in a different direction. You need to hold your plans loosely enough that you can pivot when necessary, but firmly enough that you do not give up at the first sign of difficulty. This is a paradox, and it is a difficult balance to strike, but it is essential for unshakable composure. Because when you know that your ultimate security is not in your bank account, but in your relationship with God, when you know that your purpose is not self-defined but divinely assigned, when you know that your provision is not dependent solely on your efforts, but on God's faithfulness, then you can face any circumstance with peace. You can experience loss without losing hope. You can face uncertainty without being controlled by fear. You can encounter setbacks without questioning your entire direction. Let me give you a practical example of how this works. Imagine you are in a business negotiation. The other party knows you need the deal. They can sense your desperation. They start making demands that are unreasonable, offering terms that are not in your best interest. If you are operating from a place of emotional neediness, you will probably accept those terms because you cannot afford to walk away. But if you are operating from a place of consecrated detachment, if you have genuinely surrendered the outcome to God and are committed to only moving forward with deals that align with wisdom and integrity, you have the ability to walk away. And here is the paradox. The moment you have the ability to walk away is the moment you gain all the power in the negotiation. When the other party realizes you are not desperate, that you are not controlled by need, they suddenly become more reasonable. They start offering better terms. They respect you more because you respect yourself enough to have standards. This is not manipulation. This is simply the natural result of operating from a position of strength rather than weakness. The fifth principle is the practice of preemptive peace. This is the discipline of cultivating inner calm before you need it, not just trying to find it in the middle of a crisis. Rockefeller did not wait until he was in the middle of a business emergency to develop his composure. He worked on it daily. He had morning routines that centered him. He took time for reflection and prayer. He deliberately slowed himself down when he felt pressure building. He practiced being calm in small moments so that it would be available to him in large moments. You need to do the same. You cannot expect to have peace during a financial crisis if you have not practiced having peace during ordinary days. Peace is like a muscle. It gets stronger with use. And the time to build that muscle is not when you are already under maximum stress. It is in the regular daily practice of choosing calm over chaos, choosing faith over fear, choosing trust over anxiety. This is where spiritual disciplines become immensely practical. When you spend time in prayer each morning, you are not just fulfilling a religious obligation. You are training your nervous system to default to peace instead of panic. When you meditate on scripture that speaks to God's faithfulness and provision, you are not just engaging in a devotional practice. You are rewiring your brain to interpret circumstances through a lens of faith rather than fear. When you practice gratitude, deliberately focusing on what you have rather than what you lack, you are not just being positive. You are training yourself to see abundance instead of scarcity, which fundamentally changes how you operate in the marketplace. These are not separate activities from your financial life. They are the foundation of your financial life. The person you are in your private moments with God is the person who will show up in your business dealing. If you are anxious and fearful in your prayer time, you will be anxious and fearful in your negotiations. If you are peaceful and trusting in your quiet time, you will be peaceful and trusting in your decision-making. I want you to understand that this is not about achieving some perfect state where nothing ever bothers you. That is not realistic, and it is not the goal. The goal is to develop the ability to return to center quickly, to not stay shaken even when something shakes you. Think of it like a gyroscope. A gyroscope can be disturbed, can be knocked off balance, but it has an internal mechanism that constantly brings it back to stability. That is what you are building. Not the inability to be affected by circumstances, but the ability to not stay affected. The ability to feel the emotion, acknowledge it, and then consciously choose your response rather than being controlled by it. This is emotional maturity. This is what it means to be stable. Stability does not mean never moving. It means always returning to your center. The sixth principle is strategic simplicity. Rockefeller was famous for reducing complex situations to simple principles. He did not allow himself to get overwhelmed by complexity. He would identify the core issue, the essential question, and focus on that while ignoring the noise. This is crucial for maintaining composure because complexity breeds anxiety. When you are trying to track 100 different variables, considering 1,000 possible outcomes, you create mental chaos that makes calm impossible. But when you can cut through the complexity to identify what actually matters, you create mental clarity that makes calm natural. So you need to ask yourself, what are the few things that actually determine my success or failure? What are the core metrics that I need to track? What are the essential activities that move the needle? And then you need to ruthlessly eliminate everything else from your focus, not necessarily from your business, but from your mental bandwidth. Delegate what can be delegated. Automate what can be automated. Ignore what does not matter. Create simplicity wherever possible, because simplicity creates space for peace. This applies to your financial life in very practical ways. You do not need 17 different investment accounts. You do not need to be pursuing 12 different income streams. You do not need to be constantly jumping on every new opportunity that presents itself. More is not better. Better is better. Focus is better. Simplicity is better. When you have a simple, clear financial strategy that you understand and believe in, you can execute it with confidence and calm. But when you are constantly chasing the next thing, constantly second-guessing yourself, constantly adding more complexity, you create an environment where anxiety thrives. Rockefeller built one of the largest fortunes in history by focusing on one industry, oil. He did not scatter his attention across dozens of different ventures. He identified where he could create the most value, and he went deep. He became the absolute best at what he did. And that deep focus, that simplicity of purpose, gave him a clarity that translated into composure. The seventh principle is what I call sovereign perspective. This is the practice of viewing every circumstance, good or bad, through the lens of God's sovereignty and goodness. It is the deep conviction that nothing happens to you that has not first passed through God's hand, and that He is working all things together for your good and His glory. This is not naive optimism. This is not pretending that bad things are actually good. This is the mature faith that can hold the tension between acknowledging that something is difficult, while simultaneously trusting that God is using it for a greater purpose. When you operate from this perspective, it changes everything about how you respond to setbacks. You do not spiral into despair because you trust that even this difficulty is part of a larger plan. You do not make panic decisions because you believe that God is in control even when you are not. You do not lose your peace because you know that your ultimate security is not dependent on circumstances aligning perfectly. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, thrown into prison. By any measure, these were terrible circumstances. But Joseph maintained his integrity, his faith, his character through all of it. And at the end, he could look back and say to his brothers, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." He could see that what looked like random tragedy was actually divine orchestration. He could maintain his composure through years of difficulty because he never lost sight of God's sovereignty. You need to develop this same perspective. You need to believe, truly believe, that God is working in and through your financial challenges for purposes you cannot yet see. This does not mean you are passive. It does not mean you do not take action to improve your situation. It means that you take action from a place of faith rather than fear. You move forward with confidence because you trust that even if things do not go according to your plan, they are still going according to God's plan. Now, here is where I want to address something that I know some of you are struggling with. You are thinking, "This all sounds great, but you do not understand my situation. You do not understand how bad it really is. You do not understand the pressure I am under." And you are right. I do not know your specific circumstances, but I do know this. Your circumstances, as difficult as they may be, are not more powerful than the principles I am sharing with you. These principles do not work because your situation is easy. They work precisely because your situation is hard. They are designed for pressure. They are built for difficulty. They are meant to be your anchor in the storm, not your umbrella in the sun. The question is not whether these principles can work in your situation. The question is whether you are willing to apply them consistently enough to see results. And this is where most people fail, not because the principles do not work, but because they give up too soon. They try practicing peace for a week, and when they still feel anxious, they conclude it does not work. They work on separating their identity from their outcomes for a month, and when they still feel shaken by a setback, they go back to their old pattern. But this is not a quick fix. This is a lifelong practice. This is a daily discipline. Rockefeller did not develop his unshakable composure overnight. It was the result of decades of consistent practice, of daily commitment to managing his internal state, of refusing to let circumstances control him. You have to be willing to play the long game. You have to be willing to keep practicing even when you do not see immediate results. You have to trust the process. Let me share something with you that might be hard to hear but is absolutely essential for your growth. Your financial anxiety is serving you in some way, or you would have already let it go. I know that sounds strange, but think about it. Anxiety feels productive. It feels like you are doing something, like you are staying on top of things, like you are being responsible. If you let go of the anxiety, you might fear that you will become complacent, that you will miss something important, that things will fall apart. So unconsciously, you hold on to the anxiety because it gives you a sense of control, even though it is a false sense of control. But here is the truth. Anxiety does not make you more prepared. It makes you less effective. Anxiety does not help you see problems more clearly. It distorts your perception. Anxiety does not make you work harder. It makes you work inefficiently. The anxiety is not serving you. It is sabotaging you. And until you are willing to let it go, until you are willing to trust that you can be responsible and diligent and proactive without being anxious, you will stay stuck. This is where faith becomes absolutely crucial. Faith is not the absence of action. Faith is confident action based on trust in God, rather than anxious action based on fear of outcomes. You can work just as hard, be just as strategic, take just as much responsibility, all while operating from a place of peace instead of panic. In fact, You will do all of those things better when you are not driven by anxiety. Your decisions will be clearer. Your strategies will be sounder. Your execution will be more effective. Peace is not passivity. Peace is power. Peace is the internal state that allows you to show up as your best self, to think clearly, to act decisively, to lead effectively. And the beautiful paradox is that when you stop needing specific outcomes so desperately, you are actually more likely to achieve those outcomes because you are operating from strength rather than weakness. Now, I need to take a moment to address those of you who are ready to take this seriously. Those of you who recognize that what I am sharing is not just information, but transformation. Those of you who are tired of living in constant financial anxiety and are ready to do whatever it takes to develop genuine, lasting peace. If that is you, I want you to do something right now. I want you to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. And I know what you might be thinking. You are thinking, here comes the sales pitch. But that is not what this is. This is not about me growing my numbers. This is about you getting the support you need for the journey you are on. Because what I am sharing with you right now is not a one-time message. This is a complete framework for financial transformation that requires ongoing reinforcement, ongoing teaching, ongoing community. If you watch this video and then disappear back into your old environment, back into the same patterns, back into the same mindset, you are going to lose what you have gained here. You need consistent input. You need regular reminders. You need to be part of a community that is moving in the same direction. That is what this channel is. This is not just a collection of random videos. This is a comprehensive education in biblical prosperity, in financial wisdom, in the kind of character development that leads to lasting wealth. Every single week, I create content specifically designed to help people like you, people who are serious about transforming their relationship with money, people who want to build wealth with integrity, people who understand that financial success is as much about internal transformation as it is about external strategy. When you subscribe and turn on notifications, you are not just following a channel. You are enrolling in a masterclass that never ends. You are positioning yourself to receive ongoing training, ongoing encouragement, ongoing wisdom that will compound over time. And here is what I promise you. I will never waste your time. Every video is intentional. Every message is crafted to move you forward. Every teaching is designed to give you practical tools you can use immediately. This is not entertainment. This is education. This is transformation. So if you are serious about this, if you are ready to stop being shaken by your circumstances and start shaping them instead, subscribe right now. Turn on those notifications. Become part of a community that is committed to the same journey you are on. Let me continue with the 8th principle, which is the practice of decisive action. Here is something that most people do not understand about composure. It is not just about being calm. It is about being calm while moving forward. There is a type of peace that comes from avoidance, from not engaging, from hiding from your problem. That is not the kind of peace I am talking about. The peace I am describing is the peace that comes from knowing you are doing everything you should be doing, that you are being faithful to your responsibilities, that you are taking appropriate action. This is what gives you the right to be at peace. When you are procrastinating, when you are avoiding difficult decisions, when you are not doing what you know you should be doing, you cannot have genuine peace. You might have numbness, you might have distraction, but you will not have the deep, settled peace that comes from integrity. Rockefeller was decisive. When he identified a problem, he addressed it. When he saw an opportunity, he moved on it. He did not agonize endlessly. He did not second-guess himself into paralysis. He gathered the information he needed, made the best decision he could with that information, and then moved forward without looking back. You need to develop this same decisiveness. Most financial anxiety comes not from wrong decisions but from delayed decisions, from letting things hang in uncertainty, from not making the call, not having the conversation, not taking the action that you know needs to be taken. Every day you delay a necessary decision is a day you carry unnecessary anxiety. So you need to make a commitment to yourself. You need to decide that you will address issues promptly, that you will make decisions in a timely manner, that you will act when action is called for. This does not mean being impulsive. It means being decisive. It means gathering adequate information, seeking wise counsel when needed, and then making the call and committing to it. The anxiety you feel from making a wrong decision is almost always less than the anxiety you feel from not making any decision at all. Because when you make a decision, at least you are moving, you are learning, you are getting feedback. But when you stay in indecision, you are stuck, you are stagnant, you are carrying the weight of unresolved issues. Make the decision, take the action, move forward, and then trust that even if it turns out to be wrong, you will learn from it and adjust. This kind of decisive action is what creates the momentum that carries you through difficulty. The ninth principle is relational wisdom. Rockefeller understood that very few financial problems are purely financial. Most are relational. They involve other people. They involve communication, negotiation, trust, collaboration, and your ability to maintain composure directly impacts the quality of your relationships, which directly impacts your financial results. When you are anxious and desperate, you show up differently in every interaction. You push too hard. You are not listening well. You are so focused on what you need that you miss what others need. You make people uncomfortable. You erode trust without even realizing it. But when you are calm and composed, when you are secure in yourself, you become someone that others want to work with. You become someone that people trust. You become a magnet for opportunity. Because people know that working with you will be a positive experience. This is not manipulation. This is simply the natural result of emotional maturity. So you need to ask yourself, how am I showing up in my business relationships? Am I bringing peace or chaos? Am I creating trust or suspicion? Am I making others feel valued or used? Your composure is not just about you. It affects everyone around you. When you are at peace, you create an environment of peace. When you are anxious, you spread anxiety. As a leader, as a business owner, as someone who is stewarding resources and relationships, you have a responsibility to manage your own internal state, because it impacts everyone in your sphere of influence. Think about the people who work for you, who partner with you, who depend on you. They can feel your energy. They can sense when you are stressed, and that stress becomes contagious. It affects their performance. It affects their peace. It affects the entire culture of your organization. But when you model calm confidence, when you demonstrate trust in God and commitment to doing the right thing regardless of circumstances, you create a culture where people can do their best work, where creativity flourishes, where problems are solved rather than just worried about. The 10th principle is the practice of gratitude as a weapon against anxiety. This might sound soft, but it is actually one of the most powerful tools you have. Anxiety is always future-focused. It is always about what might happen, what could go wrong, what you might lose. Gratitude is present-focused. It is about what you have right now, what is already working, what you have been given. And you cannot be fully anxious and fully grateful at the same time. They are incompatible emotional states. When you deliberately practice gratitude, you are not just being positive. You are strategically shifting your focus away from what you lack to what you have. And that shift changes everything. It changes how you see opportunity. It changes how you make decisions. It changes how you show up in every situation. Rockefeller, despite his enormous wealth, never lost his gratitude. He never took his blessings for granted. He remembered where he came from. He appreciated what he had been given. And that gratitude kept him grounded, kept him humble, kept him operating from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. You need to make gratitude a daily practice, not just a nice thought, but a deliberate discipline. Every morning, before you check your phone, before you dive into your day, take 3 minutes to list things you are grateful for. And I do not mean generic things, I mean specific things. Not just I am grateful for my family, but I am grateful that my daughter laughed at my joke last night. Not just I am grateful for my health, but I am grateful that I could walk up the stairs without getting winded. The more specific you are, the more real it becomes. The more real it becomes, the more it shifts your emotional state. Do this every single day for 30 days, and watch what happens to your anxiety levels. Watch what happens to your perspective. Watch what happens to your ability to stay calm in difficulty. Gratitude is not about pretending problems do not exist. It is about maintaining proper proportion. It is about remembering that even in the midst of challenges, there are still blessings. And when you train yourself to see both, you develop a balanced perspective that does not get swept away by either extreme. The 11th principle is the importance of physical discipline. This is something that modern people often overlook, but Rockefeller understood it intuitively. Your physical state affects your emotional state. When you are exhausted, hungry, or physically unwell, everything feels worse. Problems seem bigger. Stress feels more intense. Your capacity for calm is diminished, so you need to treat your physical well-being as a strategic priority, not a luxury. You need adequate sleep. Not because you are weak, but because sleep is when your brain processes information, when your body repairs itself, when your emotional resilience is rebuilt. You cannot be emotionally stable on 4 hours of sleep. You need proper nutrition, not just eating, but eating in a way that supports stable energy and mental clarity. When your blood sugar is spiking and crashing all day, your emotions will follow the same pattern. You need regular movement, not necessarily intense exercise, though that has benefits, but at least daily walking, stretching, something that gets you out of your head and into your body. Rockefeller was famous for his daily walks. He used them to clear his mind, to think through problems, to maintain his physical health. This was not a waste of time. This was strategic investment in his capacity to lead effectively. You need to see your physical discipline the same way. Every choice you make about sleep, food, and movement is either supporting your emotional stability or undermining it. You cannot treat your body like garbage and expect your mind to perform at peak capacity. They are connected. So if you are serious about developing unshakable composure, you need to take your physical discipline seriously. Go to bed at a reasonable hour. Eat real food instead of junk. Move your body every day. These are not optional extras. These are foundations of sustainable success. And when you get them right, you will find that many of your emotional struggles diminish simply because your physical foundation is solid. You will have more capacity for patience, more resilience in the face of setbacks, more energy for doing what needs to be done. Your physical discipline is not separate from your financial success. It is the platform on which your financial success is built. The 12th principle is the power of chosen focus. Your mind can only hold so much at one time. If you fill it with worry, there is no room for wisdom. If you fill it with fear, there is no room for faith. If you fill it with worst-case scenarios, there is no room for creative solutions. You have to be intentional about what you allow to occupy your mental space. This is not about positive thinking in the shallow sense. This is about strategic focus. It is about choosing to put your mental energy toward what you can control rather than what you cannot, toward solutions rather than problems, toward possibilities rather than limitations. Rockefeller was masterful at this. When presented with a problem, he would not dwell on how bad it was. He would immediately shift to what could be done about it. He would ask, what is the opportunity in this difficulty? What can I learn from this? How can I use this to become stronger? This was not denial. This was strategic reframing. You need to develop this same mental discipline. When you catch yourself spiraling into worry, you need to consciously redirect your thoughts. Ask yourself, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Is this focus moving me forward or keeping me stuck? And then deliberately choose a more useful focus. This takes practice. Your brain has grooves worn into it from years of habitual thinking patterns. Worry feels familiar. Anxiety feels normal. But you can create new grooves. You can train your brain to default to faith instead of fear, to solutions instead of problems, to possibilities instead of limitation. It starts with catching yourself in the old pattern and consciously choosing a different thought. Do this 100 times a day if you have to. Do it 1,000 times. Every time you make that choice, you are strengthening the new pattern and weakening the old one. Over time, the new pattern becomes automatic. Peace becomes your default instead of anxiety. Trust becomes your default instead of fear. Now, as we are coming toward the end of our time together, I want to leave you with something that I believe is the most important truth of all. Everything I have shared with you, all 12 principles, all the practical tools and strategies, they all rest on one foundational reality. You were not created to be controlled by your circumstances. You were created to be more than a conqueror through Christ who loves you. You were created to walk in authority, in peace, in power. Not power over others, but power over yourself. The ability to govern your own spirit, to manage your own emotions, to direct your own thoughts. This is your birthright as a child of God. This is who you were meant to be. But somewhere along the way, you forgot. You started believing that circumstances determine your experience. You started thinking that you could only be at peace when everything was going well. You started accepting anxiety as normal, as inevitable, as just part of life. But it is not. It does not have to be. You can live differently. You can be different, not by changing your circumstances, but by changing yourself. And here is the beautiful truth that I want you to hold on to. Every single person who has ever achieved anything significant, every person who has built lasting wealth, every person who has made a real difference, they all had to learn what I have been teaching you. They all had to develop this unshakable composure. They all had to overcome the same fears and anxieties that you are facing. The only difference between you and them is that they decided to do the work. They decided to practice these principles. They decided to keep going even when it was hard. They decided that they were not going to let their circumstances control them. And you can make that same decision right now, today. You can decide that from this moment forward, you are going to operate differently. You are going to think differently. You are going to be different. Not because you have perfect circumstances, but because you have made a commitment to yourself and to God that you are going to become the person you were created to be. This is not going to be easy. I need to be honest with you about that. You are going to have moments when you slip back into old patterns. You are going to have days when the anxiety feels overwhelming. You are going to have times when you question whether any of this is really working. But in those moments, I want you to remember something. Every master was once a beginner. Every expert was once a novice. Every person who now walks in unshakable peace once struggled with crippling anxiety. They did not get there overnight. They got there through daily practice, through consistent effort, through refusing to give up even when progress felt slow. And you can do the same, one day at a time, one decision at a time, one moment of choosing peace over panic at a time. Each choice matters. Each practice session counts. Each time you redirect your thoughts, you are building the mental muscles that will serve you for the rest of your life. And here is what I know for certain. When you commit to this path, when you seriously apply these principles, when you make the daily choice to cultivate peace instead of accepting anxiety, your entire life will transform. Not just your finance, though those will improve. Not just your business, though that will grow. But your relationships will deepen. Your health will improve. Your joy will increase. Your sense of purpose will clarify. Because everything in your life flows from your internal state. When you get that right, everything else starts falling into place. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you become capable of handling whatever life brings. You develop the resilience to bounce back from setback, the wisdom to see opportunities in difficulty, the patience to wait for the right timing, the courage to take bold action when needed, the peace to rest when rest is called for. You become someone who is no longer tossed by every wave, but who can navigate through storms with confidence and calm. This is not just about you. This is about everyone whose life you touch. Your children are watching. They are learning what it looks like to handle pressure. They are forming their own beliefs about money, success, and peace based on what they see modeled in you. What are you teaching them? Are you teaching them that financial stress is normal and inevitable? Or are you showing them that it is possible to pursue prosperity with peace? Your employees are watching. Your partners are watching. Your friends are watching. You have influence. You have impact. And the greatest gift you can give to everyone in your sphere is to become someone who has learned to be unshaken. Because when you are at peace, you give others permission to be at peace. When you demonstrate faith, you inspire faith in others. When you show that it is possible to face difficulty with calm confidence, you become a living testimony to the power of these principles. So I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to take everything you have learned in this conversation and actually apply it. Do not just let this be information that you consume and forget. Let this be transformation that you embrace and implement. Start tomorrow morning. Before you do anything else, spend 3 minutes practicing gratitude. Write down 3 specific things you are grateful for. Then identify one area where you have been letting circumstances shake you. Maybe it is checking your bank account obsessively. Maybe it is catastrophizing about the future. Maybe it is making decisions from desperation instead of wisdom. Whatever it is, make a commitment to do one thing differently. Just one thing. Practice separating your identity from your outcomes. Practice strategic detachment from constant monitoring. Practice taking decisive action instead of agonizing in indecision. Pick one principle and work on it intentionally for the next 7 days. Then pick another principle and add it to your practice. Layer these principles on top of each other, one at a time, until they become second nature. And remember this, you are not doing this alone. You have access to the same power that raised Christ from the dead. You have the Holy Spirit living inside you, ready to give you wisdom, strength, and peace beyond your natural capacity. You are not just relying on willpower or positive thinking. You are tapping into supernatural resources. So when it feels hard, pray. When you feel overwhelmed, worship. When anxiety tries to overtake you, declare the truth of God's word over your situation. Remind yourself that God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. Remind yourself that you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Remind yourself that your God shall supply all your needs according to his riches in glory. These are not just nice scriptures. These are powerful realities that you can build your life on. The path to unshakable composure is not a secret. It is not mysterious. It is a well-worn path that countless people have walked before you. Rockefeller walked it. Successful believers throughout history have walked it. And now it is your turn. The question is not whether the path exists. The question is whether you are willing to walk it. Are you willing to do the daily work? Are you willing to practice these principles even when you do not feel like it? Are you willing to keep going even when progress feels slow? Are you willing to become the person who can handle prosperity with wisdom? Who can face difficulty with peace? Who can operate from a place of faith instead of fear? I believe you are. I believe that if you have listened this far, if you have stayed engaged with this message, it is because something inside you knows that you are meant for more, that you are capable of more, that God has called you to more, and that calling is going to require you to develop the internal strength and stability that I have been describing. So here is my final word to you. Stop waiting for perfect circumstances to give yourself permission to be at peace. Stop thinking that you will relax once everything is figured out. Stop believing that anxiety is inevitable. Start practicing peace today, right now. Regardless of your circumstance, start choosing faith over fear in every small decision. Start operating from a place of abundance instead of scarcity. Start believing that you are a steward of resources that belong to God and are meant to be used for His purposes. When you make this shift, when you commit to this path, everything changes. Not overnight, not without effort, but gradually, steadily, powerfully, you will become someone who cannot be shaken, someone who walks with calm confidence, someone who faces every challenge with peace, someone who builds wealth with wisdom, someone who leaves a legacy worth having. This is who you were meant to be. This is the life you were created to live, and it starts with the decision you make right now. Will you commit to this path? Will you do the work? Will you become unshakable? I believe you will. Now go and prove me right.